Welcome to Arcadian. The Ardling was a new character ancestry introduced in late 2023 as playtest material for 1D&D, the next iteration of D&D after 5th edition. Despite Wizards' best efforts though, the consensus seemed to be against the Ardling, and as a result, it was chopped off from the 2024 Player's Handbook. But it would be a waste not to learn from this fiasco. Why didn't the Ardling connect with the players? I think I know why, and in fact I believe it's the same problem that's been plaguing D&D ancestries for a long time. Yes, we're finally making that video. This is why D&D ancestries suck. Picture you're Wizards of the Coast, and you're about to release the Ardling as playtest material. It's a flashy ancestry with a considerable range of features and a tremendous customization potential. You have no doubt it will be a resounding success. A few months later, you analyze the survey results, and the satisfaction scores are much lower than expected. The community cries that the method behind the surveys is questionable, one of them being a very handsome man with a signature goatee whose video you can see right here. But even so, you expected a much better reaction. But that's okay, because against the advice of the handsome goatee man, you still think the Ardling scored high enough in satisfaction to be salvageable, so you release a revised version, incorporating some of the feedback. For sure, it will do much better. Except it doesn't. And after 2 failed playtests, you have no choice but to admit that the players don't really care about the Ardling. What went wrong? The basic premise of the Ardling was a humanoid with a divine heritage and an animal head, which I'm guessing drew inspiration from many real-world religions, like the ancient Egypt deities. They even went to such extremes as branding them as the celestial equivalent of the tiefling, which was rather odd because we always thought that would be the Aasimar. It's important to note one key difference between the Aasimar and the Ardling as half-celestials though, aside from the obvious aesthetic appeal. Aasimar have been a part of D&D since 2nd edition, I believe, so there's a considerable amount of lore that ties them into the game, and although it isn't nearly as rich as, for example, the Elven one, it's still evocative. Compared to this, the Ardlings are the new kids on the block with nothing to show for themselves aside from a mix of rip-off features from several different ancestries. They are celestials but don't feel as divine as the Aasimar. They are beastfolk but neither as bestial nor as effective as beastfolk as the Tabaxi, the Kenku or so many others. They are many things but don't excel at any of them. Hearing the fan feedback, Wizards decided to cut off some of the divine aspect and make them more bestial, but all that did was deprive Ardlings even more of something like a heart. It reduced them to an excuse for people to play furries with no customization limits imposed. But not only there are already several beastfolk ancestries available, all of them are much better at it. I believe, and I might be severely mistaken about this, that the Ardlings were not created as a core concept that was progressively deepened, but rather as an end product that was designed backwards. In other words, instead of starting with a core concept like the fantasy of playing as a descendant of an ancient Egypt deity, and exploring that, delving deeper and deeper on the meaning and the consequences of such a lineage, I feel like they instead started at the end. Specifically, we want people to be able to play as a humanoid with an animal head, and then worked backwards, improvising whatever excuses they needed to arrive at such a final design. And this is not a terrible method. I even mentioned it in my video about how to start world building. But if you're not careful, you can get too locked up in the idea of your final design and lose track of the heart that it needs to have to allow for such a final vision. And that is what I feel towards the Ardling. It misses a heart. When I play any other D&D ancestry, I like to feel as if I am embodying a completely different biological entity. I like to think of what it means to play such a different species and incorporate that into my roleplay. But I couldn't tell what it meant to play an Ardling. They had no core, so playing them would be just like playing a human, just with an animal head. And the worst thing is, I don't believe this problem is exclusive to the Ardling. I believe there is an excessive number of playable ancestries in D&D. And I don't say excessive because there are too many of them. It's because, A, their number far exceeds the appropriate proportion when compared to the number of classes. B, because an ancestry is something we can homebrew easily. We don't need wizards to give us their official ones. But mostly because, C, there is nothing that truly distinguishes most of them apart from the physical exterior. If you think about it, what is the difference between a Goliath and a human barbarian? Most of the times none, because players roleplay them the same way. But Goliaths are half giants. That concept alone is fizzling with potential. There must be something unique to them that makes playing one a unique experience. But no, not really. Volo's Guide to Monsters only says that they're very competitive beings and well adapted to the harsh life on the mountains. Even their features are not very giant-like. Does that mean that if my character was a bald, big, and very competitive human who was adapted to the harsh life of the mountains, it would be no different from a Goliath? Then why is Goliath an ancestry? Why didn't wizards just design them as a subculture of humans? The book doesn't even tell us why they are like this, what forged them in this manner. Why bother creating an ancestry based on such an amazing concept like the half-giant and design them as nothing but really buff, competitive, and survivalist humans? Nothing that actually makes them half-giants. Just so much wasted potential. And this applies to a lot of races. The Tabaxi and the Triton, for example, have interesting concepts, but both seem just like simple racial externalizations of a rogue bard multiclass and a paladin. And the context given leaves much to be desired. Why did wizards make them this way? I suspect it's the same issue as the Ardling. They were designed backwards. Wizards wanted to provide a half-giant ancestry option and created all the artwork, mechanical tags, and features to allow players to pick such an ancestry from the book and be a Goliath, at least on the character sheet, because they were so focused in the final product, the final aesthetic they wanted to provide, they forgot to give it a heart, something that made the players truly feel like playing a different species, and a half-giant at that, not just a bald, bulkier than normal mountain man. The consequences of this philosophy are especially obvious when you see people excited to play new ancestries not because of their lore, characteristics, or what it means to be one of those beings, but purely because of the images that come on the book. In other words, people play new ancestries because they look cool aesthetically, not because they are interesting on the inside. But the interest on the outer look is short-lived because after a few sessions, even the most abnormal ancestry will become normal if there's a party member belonging to it. If the ancestry doesn't have enough substance to live on its own, to make the player fall in love for what it means to be part of that species, after a few sessions, they will revert to playing a human. That is not bad, but it could be better. Playing an ancestry because they look cool and because they are interesting provides a deeper and more rewarding roleplay experience. If players are only being captivated by the outer look of the ancestries, that means Wizards is not making them interesting and deep enough. By the way, if what I'm saying is making sense to you, I would really appreciate it if you push the like button so other people can watch this video too. And if you're liking this and wouldn't mind throwing me some encouragement, consider subscribing to bookmark this channel or watch some of my other videos. Thank you so much for doing so. I might be wrong, but I think the lack of proper new ancestries may also be just Wizards taking the easy way out. Everyone knows that what you are and what you do in the game is determined much more by your class than by your ancestry. However, in the almost 10 years of 5th edition, Wizards only released one new class aside from the original 12. But if you look at their races, they're over 40. It's very complicated to design, test, and publish a new class. A new ancestry, however, it's very easy. It affects the game balance and how you play it much less. It only has a couple of features to worry about. It seems mostly aesthetic, but it allows Wizards to publish big fat books and make it look like they're providing us with a lot of content. Look at all those options. Except it shouldn't be only aesthetic. It shouldn't be that easy. Each playable species should have exceptionally evocative lore so you could truly bring something new into your roleplay when you use them. The same amount of effort and thorough testing that is given to a class's game mechanics should be given to a species' lore and even their features. If when making a new class, a game designer should ask themselves, how can these mechanics provide a new way to play and enjoy the game? When making a new ancestry, the question should be, how can this lore provide new interesting ways to elevate and potentiate roleplay? How can it enhance the fun of a player embodying a different biological species with all the culture associated to it? There are good examples of this in D&D, the elves being the very best. I have a whole video talking about it and how it can elevate your roleplay, link here or down below in the Underdark. But I feel that is still lacking in many other species. Many of the new ancestries feel so short in information, lore, and general psyche of the species that they provide little more than just a few roleplay pointers. It gets even worse when the game itself doesn't encourage this roleplay. Even elves, despite having a very rich lore, have little incentive for you to actually bring these amazing elements into your roleplay. There are no features that use them. The interesting part of the lore is on a supplement book, not on the main player's handbook. You basically have to do all the work yourself, and there is no reward. And as I've said before, players ignore design that ignores the players, so no one ends up using this awesome material. This turns each species into bidimensional cardboard cutouts instead of deep three-dimensional beings that players can have fun exploring. They seem like they have no heart, nothing to make them provide a unique role-playing experience to players. Most of the times, playing as one of these races feels no different than playing a human, just with a few special physical attributes. And don't get me wrong, I don't think there's anything wrong in playing the game that way. You can absolutely have fun playing an elf or an orc or an Aarakocra or anything else as if they were a human with no psychological distinction between the two species. The thing is, I think role-playing has so much more to give. You can have so much fun exploring the idiosyncrasies of living in the skin of a different biological entity. It's a kind of fun that only role-playing games can provide. So if you're playing an RPG and you're denying that unique feature of these games, you are intentionally cutting yourself from a very unique and fun way to play. It's as if you go to an ice cream shop and say, "No ice cream please, just a cone, I'm just here for the cookie." That's a perfectly legit way to spend your money, but if cookies were all you wanted, wouldn't you be better going at a pastry shop? In the end, what I think is the biggest thing missing from the Ardlings and many other D&D ancestries really is that heart. A rich and evocative lore that the players can use as fuel to elevate their roleplay and have a unique playing experience. One that feels different and therefore more special than playing as any other ancestry. Especially if all of this is paired with appropriate game mechanics that encourage and reward that kind of roleplay. In my games, the solution I devised for this was completely revising every single ancestry into my own version of them. I call them narrative-driven ancestries because I added to them a couple of features that reward players when they play truthfully to the ancestry's lore, and also a quest deeply tied to the life cycle of that ancestry to make them feel even more elven or dwarven or dragonborn-y, even more human. That's what I'm going to share with you in the next video. I will link it up here or down below in the Underdark as soon as it comes out. I considered condensing everything into a single video, but not only that video would be too long, I'd also like to show you my method in more detail, and this way, people who are only interested in the design part, but not in my rant, can go to that video and ignore this one. I don't know when that video is coming out, but I think it'll be a very useful one, so I want to take my time to get it right. There's also a lot going on in my personal life right now. The good kind, nothing bad, but the kind of stuff that still gives you a lot of work, so it may take me a couple of weeks before the next video. I thank you for your patience ahead of time. While you wait though, I recommend you check out my videos on role-playing elves, dwarves, and all the others, as it kind of complements all that I've been saying so far. There will be links on my left right now. Thank you for watching. I'm the first Arcadian, and you won, but so did we.